I woke up in the middle of the night in an unfamiliar room. I flipped to the other side to check the time and almost had a heart attack to find someone standing next to me. It was dark, so it took me a second to realize that it was the boy I babysat. Little did I know that this night would set off a chain of events that would leave me traumatized. Before I tell you what went down this summer, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification. Even though my eyes were open, I was still disoriented from sleep and confused about my surroundings. I tried to recall last night, and then remembered that I slept at the house where I had just started babysitting a 10-year-old boy. His aunt had a work emergency, so she asked me to stay the night. "What's the matter?" I asked him. "She wants me to play with her." I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. "Who wants to play with you at this time?" I grumbled. "We always play in the dark when they are sleeping." "You play with your friend when your aunt is sleeping?" This kid was making no sense. Or maybe he was sleepwalking. "Well, where is your friend?" "She is locked in the closet." I sighed and went to his room to assure him that his friend was only a figment of his imagination. I turned on the lights and opened the closet, showing him that there was no one in there but his clothes and shoes. He looked in the closet and somberly walked towards his bed. This kid is 10 years old and acts more mature than my 17-year-old friends. "It's okay, you can go to sleep now." I patted his shoulder. "I don't sleep." "You mean you can't sleep?" "No, I mean I don't sleep, ever." I ignored that little information and tucked the boy in, turned off the lights, and left the room. I couldn't sleep any longer, so I decided to binge on my story animated videos on YouTube. 2 hours later, I was lost in another video when I decided to check on the kid. I entered his room noiselessly, not wanting to wake him up, and had another mini heart attack in one night when I saw him sitting on the bed, staring straight towards the closet. "You're still awake?" I asked in surprise. "I told you I don't sleep." I was starting to believe him now. "Why don't you sleep?" He pointed to his head and said, "It's because they hurt me here." "Who?" I asked, feeling a little unsettled now. "The people who hurt my friend." And he looked at the closet again. The doorbell rang just at that moment, and I jumped in shock. It was his aunt. She is a surgeon and often gets called for emergencies at ungodly hours. I was so glad that she had returned and I could finally run out of this house and far away from that closet. As she was paying me, I asked about her nephew's lack of sleep. His aunt's friendly smile instantly turned into a sad one as she told me that the kid had a brain injury when he was 5 years old. That's how I found him, actually. I never planned on adopting anyone, and I'm not his real aunt. But when he was rushed into the emergency room after falling from the stairs, I felt like his adoptive parents were negligent towards him. I pulled some strings and filed for adoption. After the fall, he developed a neuroanatomic lesion and had trouble sleeping. As I was leaving the house, I felt sad for the kid and decided to get to know him better the next time I had to babysit him. It was dawn by the time I reached my house. I could see the lady who lived next door watering her plants. As I got closer to wave at her, she looked up and I saw a flash of fear in her eyes when she realized someone was walking towards her. When she realized it was just me, she instantly gave me a sweet smile, and I thought I had just imagined it. Even though we just moved into our new house, I still craved my room and my own bed to catch up on my lost sleep. Minutes before I fell asleep, my last thought was of the boy telling me that someone hurt him in the head. Weeks passed and I forgot about the boy. I spent some quality time with my parents, texted my friends, and also got to know my next-door neighbors better. The lady is actually a housewife, and her husband drives the school bus. He has this big belly laugh and warm eyes that crinkle when he smiles. My parents and I instantly liked them. I also told them about my summer activities and all the kids I babysit. Since it was summer, I didn't have school for the next 2 months, and all my friends were off on vacations to beautiful places. I had nothing much to do, so I took as many babysitting jobs as I could take so I could save up for my own car. One day, I was walking back home from another babysitting gig. It was late at night, and I was only 2 blocks away from my house when I felt this tingling feeling at the back of my neck. I turned around, but there was no one. The street was entirely deserted. I started walking again, but this time a little faster. A few seconds later, I heard a faint noise, the telltale sign of someone walking. This time I turned and found a figure standing just 2 houses down from where I was. This person had his face covered with a baseball cap and hoodie, and the deep shadows completely concealed his face. I wasn't too eager to find out either, and this time I started running. I ran all the way home. This is the first time something like this has happened to me, and by the time I reached home, I was shaken by the experience. I told my parents, and they called the cops immediately. They checked the streets but didn't find anyone. Whoever it was had left a long time ago. The next day, the surgeon called me again and asked me to look after her nephew. I went to their house in the morning, and this time I made sure to get closer to the boy. He got a pool in the back, and I asked him if he enjoys swimming. Turned out he didn't know how to swim, so I decided to teach him. After a few hours, when he had learned to tread water and float in the pool, we went inside and baked some cookies together. And then later, I played a few board games with him. In all the time I spent with the boy, I realized he was smart and mature for his age. He was also a very quiet kid and rarely ever smiled. Over the next couple of weeks, the boy and I formed a bond. I started to look forward to babysitting him. He even started talking more with me, and his aunt noticed it too. Every now and then, I would also catch him smiling. Saturday evening, I got a call from the boy's aunt asking me to babysit and stay the night as she had to rush to the hospital. I was tired but agreed nonetheless. As I started walking to the boy's house, I once again felt that strange feeling of being followed. I casually looked behind me, but there was no one. I just knew for sure that I was being followed and that someone was behind me. At first, I was scared, but then I felt angry at the person who was harassing me. I started walking again and called my dad to let him know where I was heading and to check up on me in a few minutes. I then started running and took a few wrong turns. I hid behind hedges, cars, and anything to confuse my stalker. When I was sure I had lost the stalker, I headed to the boy's house. The boy greeted me with a huge smile, and it made all the trouble from the stalker worth it. We spent all our time watching a game show until it got late and I started to feel sleepy. That's when I remembered that this boy can't sleep. "What do you do when you can't sleep?" I asked him curiously. The boy shrugged and looked around. "I look out the windows to make sure they are not there, or I check all the closets in the house to make sure no one is trapped." The way the boy spoke in a monotonous tone gave me goosebumps all over my arms. "What are you talking about? Who would be out there?" "I told you, the people who hurt me and hurt her." He once again pointed at his head. "But your aunt said you fell from the stairs. If I tell my aunt the truth, she'll tell them, and then they'll come for me again." I looked at the boy closely and realized that he was scared. He was continuously looking around here and there, mostly towards the windows and the doors. "You can tell me what happened, and I won't tell them or your aunt. I'll tell the cops, and they'll catch them and lock them up so they can never hurt you again." The boy looked at me unsurely, but I could tell that he trusted me. I made him sit down and asked him to tell me everything from the beginning. The boy looked at me for a long time and then started to tell me a story that he didn't dare tell anyone. He told me that he didn't know who his parents were, that he had a very dim memory of being in a foster care system before he was adopted. When they came to pick him up, he was happy. They looked so pleasant, so friendly. He was excited to go to a new place. His new room was small and had no windows. The room only had a bed, a desk, and a closet. They left him there and closed the door. Soon he got hungry because he hadn't eaten breakfast that day out of excitement. When he went to the door, it was locked. He shouted for them but got no response. He was still trying to open the door when he heard a noise from the closet. He instantly got scared and hid under the bed. The noise didn't stop. It was a muffled noise, as if someone was trying to say something but couldn't. After a while, he heard someone say, "Please help me." It was a girl's voice, and the boy crawled out from under the bed and slowly went to the closet. He wasn't that scared anymore because it sounded like a little girl. When he opened the door, she was lying in the closet. Her hands and feet were bound, and there was a cloth hanging loosely around her neck. She must have pulled it down from her mouth. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" the boy asked, surprised. "I am Layla. They kidnapped me. I can get you out of here." The boy began to untie her hands and feet when the door of the room opened and the man entered. He didn't look so friendly at that moment. In fact, he looked like an evil person with this horrible scowl and the baseball bat in his hands. "What are you doing?" the man growled so loudly the boy began to shake with fear. I'm helping her. If you help her, you won't get dinner tonight. If you tell anyone about her. Understood?" The boy nodded, so scared he couldn't even speak. "Don't worry. As soon as her family pays us money, we'll send her back," the man said, his tone friendly again. He left the room and locked the door. "My parents can never pay him. They don't have that much money." "Then maybe they'll send you back home," the boy said, happy at the prospect. The girl didn't look so hopeful. That night, the boy went to sleep hungry. Over the next few weeks, the two kids became friends. The door only opened for one meal a day. At the beginning of the second week, they heard loud noises outside. The man and the woman were arguing loudly, talking about what to do with the girl. Then suddenly the door opened, and the man entered the room. He was so angry his whole face was red. He carried his baseball bat in his hands and went directly to the closet. The girl stared at him in fear. "Your parents refused to pay for you, little girl. You can't stay here any longer or someone will find you." And with that, the man stepped forward and threatened to hit the girl with the baseball bat. She was crying and shouting for someone to help. The boy was scared out of his wits for what was happening right in front of his eyes. There was fear in the air and the boy started to scream. The man turned his attention towards the boy and yelled, "Quiet!" right before hitting the boy with the bat on his head. Then I woke up in the hospital and after a few days came to my aunt's house. I never saw them again. I was speechless at this point, looking at the boy with mixed emotions. For all I know, those people might still be roaming free. And what even happened to that little girl in the closet? I didn't bother asking him why he didn't tell this to his aunt. There's a high chance he doesn't trust elders at all. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't believe a kid making up stories. But this story was too vivid, too dark for a young boy to imagine. Before I could say anything, we heard a scraping sound outside the window. My heart nearly careened into my throat, and the boy jumped and hid behind me. "They are here. They have come here to take me because I told you about them." Tears were flowing down his face, and he was shaking like a leaf. "No one is here to take you, okay? I won't let them." Before I even finished my sentence, we heard noises from the front door, as if someone was desperately trying to open it. I was just as shaken as the boy, but I had to do something. I lightly tiptoed to the door and peered from the peephole. It was that guy, my stalker, standing on the patio, doing something to the door lock from the outside. "It's him! It's him! It's him!" the boy shouted, surprising me. I didn't realize that he was also looking outside from the windows next to the door. I grabbed him and rushed upstairs to where my phone was. I picked up my phone and saw that I had missed 5 calls from my dad. That's when I remembered I had asked him to check up on me. I was still trying to think about who to call when we heard the distinct sound of the front door opening. The boy gasped loudly, but I sprung into action and locked ourselves inside the boy's room. I was just about to call 911 when I heard the clear sound of police sirens coming our way. The man started running away, his feet slapping hard on the floor, but I knew he wouldn't get too far. As soon as we emerged from the house, my dad hugged me tight and then hugged the boy who had a death grip on my hands and was looking at something behind my dad's shoulder. I followed his gaze and saw the police handcuffing our neighbor. For a second, I was confused as to why the cops were handcuffing our neighbor, but then I noticed what he was wearing, the same baseball cap and hoodie as my stalker. "It's him," the boy whispered next to me, and my brain connected the dots. It can't be. Our friendly neighbor can't be the guy who kidnaps children, but I believe the boy, I decided, as I walked towards the police officer to find out what happened to the girl locked in the closet, and you will never guess who she turned out to be.